Most are afraid of unknown depths, skirting shores thinking world flat, and with the island girls in celebration of new religion. Nobody led me or said this way. I sailed alone on makeshift raft with wind as companion. Fate for deliverance, confidence enough to assess new disposition. Seekers of lost paradise may seem fools to those who never sought the other worlds. Welcome to Momentary Zen with Zen Garcia. Visit www.fallenangels.tv. You're listening to Revolution Radio.
Our life prayers awaken the spirit who formed creation in every guise. Dust, friction, the need to experience, created the power of the first orgasm of energy across infinite skies. Light, energy, movement, sound through infinite time, space. The universe we've come to grace, the great mystery. Welcome, friends. I'm your host, Zen Garcia. This is Momentary Zen on freedomslips.com, on Revolution Radio, on Studio B. And I'll be streaming to you live for the next 2 hours as we cover all things eclectic, speaking about some of the esoteric current events and covering those things which I feel are the most pressing and most important when it comes to deciphering the illusion that's parading as reality. I thank all of you that have taken the time to join us live and that support myself as well as the other various hosts. Just so you know, those of you that are joining me live and that did not catch the earlier show, Will Rogers now precedes me, and so for the 2 hours prior, from 6 to 8, you can come and catch Will and listen to his show. He always has incredible information. He's a very wise individual and is able to break down words and metaphor and meaning so that you can understand, get deeper insight into phraseology and verbs, adjectives, nouns, all that. And so it's always interesting to listen to Will and to hear some of the testimony that he has to share with world, because he has also come out of the other side of things and being brought full circle back to the study of the gospel and the study of the word. But he was involved in Masonry and secret societies, and having gone that route has an interesting perspective, to say the least, and is able to shed light on some of the rituals and also some of the discourse and the things that are shared within secret societies and these different brotherhoods, fraternities, and even like the Eastern Star, which is for the women, but is also a sisterhood and part of the secret societies that work in tangent to support the Illuminati agenda for the advancement and the introduction of world government, as well as the New World Order, which many of you are now very much aware of, and that a lot of people are being brought to discernment and are at least being led to do some research into those areas, because the New World Order is being spoken about by political representatives and prime ministers and scholars and different individuals, industrialists, entrepreneurs. It seems like those three words keep coming up. And so, for those that don't know what it is or what things are involved with the New World Order and the agenda surrounding it, a lot of people, because they're hearing it and hearing this catchphrase, they're wanting to know more. And so it's driving people to look into and to seek out alternative venues for understanding the world and what's going on with it and the prevalence of evil and how it is that we have been led to where we are now as world. And so that's one of the good things, because so many, are being forced to wake up and are being forced to go deeper than what is, the propaganda or disinformation of mainstream media outlets and these different corporate backed and sponsored news mediums. And so a lot of people are waking up and are being forced to reassess all they thought they knew and are being forced to look into things that are not being spoken about and that they're not being told from these corporate sponsored platforms. And so that's one of the reasons why Revolution Radio has attracted so many various hosts and why we have dedicated ourselves to, committed to certain time slots and to coming to you as often as I think some people probably do shows 7 days a week even. I myself am too busy to commit in such ways, but I do commit to, doing 2 shows a week and to covering information that I find that would be interesting. It also supports the research that I've done and the publications that I've brought to light in book form and the different video work that I've done. And so I'm finding that a lot of the things that we spoke about that a few years back, or even just 1 or 2 years back, seemed just so far out and so off track, and that it did not make sense to even a lot of those that were committed researchers and that were had dedicated a priority for their lives to coming to know truth in whatever ways they could find it, even as ugly as it sometimes is. That, like myself, you just want to know what's up and what's really going on. And that because not a lot of people do know and cannot really guide or direct you in coming to such discernment, we're having to rely upon each other and one another to really come to answer as to what is really going on. And so forums like this, radio programs like mine and like Will's and many of the other hosts that are here are to fellowship each other with one another so that we can encourage and empower each other, so that we can help one another to come to terms with some very difficult knowledge, and also to encourage each other in relationship with truth, and to also to be confirming witness to each other that we're we're not the crazy ones, that the rest of the world is crazy, or that they're the ones that are off. And even though they make fun of us, and they pretty much laugh at us, or um, joke joke around about us at our expense, there's going to be a time, and I think that time is sooner than later, where they're going to remember some of the things that we said, and that they're also going to be forced to eat their words. And they're going to remember all the jokes at our expense, but then they're going to realize at some point that we were ahead of the game, and that we were only trying to share things which they should know as well, in the importance of, because we have a concern for humanity. We want people to understand what's going on, and we want them to know truth and to make it important for their lives, so that they can lead others and teach others, their own children, their families, their loved ones. And you know how so many people in relationship, they talk about things that just don't really matter, and they can't really go deeper into any kind of a subject, because and this is, they may have been married 20, 30 years, but still they can't speak on anything of a more profound level. And there's nothing more profound than truth, and being able to share with somebody else that you click with, and that can also understand some of these advanced concepts. Talk about the New World Order, the conspiracy side of things, the prophetic and the biblical aspects of what's going on, and also with the ancient alien theory, and the Sumerian teachings, all the wisdom texts, and how all of these things tie together. There's no greater story in my mind, or that can ever be discussed or written about, or if somebody actually made a movie about the truth, the war in heaven, and the separation of light and darkness, the division of good and evil, and the ensuing and ongoing banishment, exile of the fallen angels, the rebel angels from the heavens, and how they came to take over the earth and establish a lot of the megalithic structures, and were responsible for reigning over the pre-Adamic humans during what's referred to as Zep Tepe, the prior times, and then their attempts to create a slave race and to corrupt the DNA of both the pre-Adamic humans as well as creatures, and also plants, and how that led to the Most High creating us, modern humanity, in his own image, and that Adam and Eve being placed into paradise and separated from the rebel angels in order to protect them from temptation, and also from being corrupted. But then, Lucifer, Satan, the adversary, and the beguilement of Eve, the firstborn, the progeny, the firstborn hybrid son of the devil, a scion of the serpent, the mythology of the feathered serpent, the dragons, the Quetzalcoatls, the Viracochas, the feathered serpents, and how they were involved in the establishment of pagan religions worldwide and how they utilize the movements of the sun, the moon, and the stars, and the solstices, the equinoxes, and um, eclipses in order to institute in various religions where a pantheon of gods and goddesses were worshipped, how they instituted victim and child sacrifice, and the cutting out of still beating hearts of human people, and then the cannibalism of bodies and the drinking of blood, and all kind of other abominable rituals. And then the birth of giants upon the planet, and how they were found before and after the flood, the fall of the 200 watchers that joined the rebel angels. I mean, it's the most incredible story that anybody could ever fathom making up, or even trying to, if you were the greatest science fiction, fairy tale, fantasy writer, still nothing could equal what is really, really going on. And those of us that know about these things and are able to understand the deeper aspects of some of the anomalous and esoteric current events and news subjects that do come to light and that are still baffling to science and to modern seekers of truth, that are not able to connect the dots and to piece together the full puzzle of truth. It's beyond comprehension to most. But those of us that are blessed to have and to share such discernment, I mean, we are the keepers of the secrets. We are the holders of the wisdom for this generation. And with such discernment comes great responsibility, in that being able to understand these things and also to be able to talk about them, that we are those that are planting seeds and that are guiding and directing those that are seeking answers. The whole motto for my website at fallenangels.tv is the seeker of lost paradise may seem an insidious fool to those whom have never sought the other worlds. And how so very true that is. Those that, are all caught up in the entertainments and the distractions of this world that are all about, money and power, wealth, prestige, and the accumulation of stuff, materialism, those kind of things that are not able to understand the mythological and biblical and prophetic side of what's going on with the world, and how really we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against powers, principalities, the rulers of darkness, wickedness in high places. All these things that they laugh at us and they make fun of us, but they have never sought after, never even heard about lost paradise. And so they've never sought the other worlds. And so anyways, those of you that can understand what I'm talking about, that get what I'm saying, I do consider us to be a privileged minority. And privileged in that we have dedicated, we have made wanting to know and yearning to understand the Creator and the creation and our place within it all, that we have put forth the effort. We have been vigilant and persistence in our efforts to seek and to find, to knock and to study and to look deeper into those things which most people, most populations, and most others care nothing about. And so that's why. It's not just that, we found one particular book that had all the answers in it, or that we met somebody that was able to explain all things to us so that everything just all of a sudden made sense. No, it was a long, very drawn out, very trying, and very long journey. A very long voyage for all of us to come to discernment, to come to knowledge, and to be able to bear witness to the things that we understand now. Who we are, why we're here, what all of this is about. Those things that individuals, scholars, prophets, men of knowledge have sought for forever long, that have been wanting to know about since the inception of humanity here upon the planet. Well, we just happen to be part of that generation where the Spirit is being poured out on all flesh. And as such, there are going to be many alive in this day and age that are being brought to such discernment. There's a passage I want to share that's from Matthew chapter 13. It says this, and and the disciples came and said unto him, Why speakest thou unto them in parables? And he answered and he said unto them, Because it is given unto you to know the mysteries of the kingdom of heaven, but to them it is not given. For whosoever hath, to him shall be given, and he shall have more abundance. But whosoever hath not, from him shall be taken away even that he hath. Therefore speak I to them in parables, because they seeing see not, and hearing hear not, neither do they understand. And in them is fulfilled the prophecy of Esaias, which saith, By hearing ye shall hear, and shall not understand, and seeing ye shall see, and shall not perceive. For this people's heart is waxed gross, and their ears are dull of hearing. Their eyes they have closed, and lest at any time they should see with their eyes, and hear with their ears, and should understand with their heart, and should be converted, and I should heal them. But blessed are your eyes, for they see, and your ears, for they hear. For verily I say unto you, that many prophets and righteous men have desired to see those things which ye see, and have not seen them, and to hear those things which you hear, and have not heard them. And so it's my opinion that those of you that truly get it, that have put forth the effort, that have been brought to discernment in a way that most of the world has not. It's because you are to be part of those that are to be blessed and to be privileged and to be entrusted as wisdom keepers. That, as I said earlier, that with such discernment comes great responsibility. So, just this line one more time. For verily I say unto you that many prophets and righteous men have desired to see those things which ye see and have not seen them, and to hear those things which ye hear and have not heard them. We're almost to the first break. When we come back from break, I'm going to cover some things talking about the Mark of Cain, which in my opinion, has to do with some of the things that are why the seed of the serpent, the seed of Cain, why the elites are different, genetically predisposed and inclined to behaviors and to certain things that the other aspect of the population and the seed of the woman do not have found within them as trait. And then I'm going to share, for those that did not read the description of the show as I posted it on Facebook, I'm going to share an investigation that was done by a geneticist that was hired by one of these Illuminati family members who had been taught by his family and bloodline that they were different and in which ways they were different, and that this particular geneticist was suicided, was murdered to keep this knowledge from coming to light. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back, everybody. And so, what I was talking about before we went to break was about a certain geneticist that was hired by one of these Illuminati elitists to look into whether they were genetically structured different than the sons of Adam and the children of Adam through the line of Seth. And so I thought I would share that particular discourse, which it's published in my 7th book, Skyfall, Angels of Destiny. It's chapter 12 in that particular book. And I also did include parts of it in what is the 2nd edition of my 4th book, Lucifer, Father of Cain, because that whole book is specific to this particular information and what the Genesis chapter 3 verse 15, what that particular scripture cites as the enmity between the seed of the woman and the seed of the serpent, and between thy sons and her sons, meaning that the Most High was speaking to the serpent at this time, the Nakash, the enchanter, the shining one of Genesis chapter 3, which he is cited in the book of Atam Ua as being the winged guardian, the serpent, the winged guardian of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. He's also referenced in the Targum as Samael, the angel of death, which is also referred to in the Gnostic texts, specifically 13 Nag Hammadi codices, as Samael is one of the names for Yaldabaoth, the demiurge, who is the ruler over the visible worlds. Same thing as the prince of the air, who we know as Satan the adversary. That another one of the Gnostic terms for him is Saklos, the blind god. And so once you understand how all these things tie together and relate to one another, you can see the underlying truth in all things, and how really it's the same story, even though there's so much disinformation out there which would try to trip you up and lead you astray and get you to believe this or that. Like so many so-called Gnostic experts try to teach that Yahweh is the demiurge of the Nag Hammadi codices, of the Gnostic texts, because they say that he's a homicidal and genocidal God of the Old Testament because of his declaration to Moses and to Joshua that when you enter into the land of Canaan and you face off with these sons of Anak, the sons of the Anunnaki, the giants, the men of renown, that you spare not one man, woman, or child. And because people don't understand that, and that these sons of Anak ruled in that land, and that they were worshippers of their fathers, the fallen angels, the rebel angels, the gods and goddesses of these various pagan religions, the pantheon of gods and goddesses, and that they demanded blood and victim sacrifice, child sacrifice, and engaged in cannibalism and also the drinking of blood, that was the reason why he levied such a harsh judgment upon them. But it's nothing different than even the flood of Noah's day, which was also a judgment against the giants and all those that had fallen away and that had gone the way of Cain. And so it's a similar kind of thing. There's even a passage in the Greek and the Slavonic books of Baruch, I believe it's Baruch 2 and Baruch 3, that specifically cites how many giants were wiped out by the flood. And the number quoted in one of them is 409,000 giants. And so, all right, and so I'm going to go into this particular teaching because I've never shared it in fullness on the various radio programs that I've done, but I think you will enjoy it, and especially those that have never heard about this information that I'm going to be going into, and that it also confirms the whole premise of my fourth book, Lucifer, Father of Cain, and that it will help you once you come to discernment that there are indeed two different people and two different bloodlines here upon this planet, and that one, like myself and like yourself, is compassionate, empathic to our fellow human being, and that we wish nothing more than those same freedoms, values, and liberties that we share, that under the, what was the Constitution, were guaranteed rights and benefits, that we wish nothing more than all people everywhere to be extended the same courtesy, and that for children, all children everywhere, to grow up in the safety, in a place of peace and comfort where they can be nourished and grow up to be productive citizens and give back to humanity and the world some of what they have been blessed to reap the bounty of. But there is a whole nother type of individual, a type of person here upon that planet that goes contrary to all that we believe is natural, and is inclined, instead of towards goodness, to evil, and to want to see harm, hurt, and pain and suffering upon the faces of their fellow humans, and especially upon the seed of the woman, the children of Adam, because they know that they are different and that they are born of the line of Cain, and that they are the children of the serpent, and that very literally they are the physical progeny of the devil. And because they are so, and they have, fallen angelic DNA and genetics within their physical makeup, they count themselves as the elite, as the chosen ones, and that they believe that because of such predisposition, they have the divine right to rule, the divine right of kings to rule over and to oppress and to treat humanity as they wish, with whatever whimsical desire they want, however it is that they want to treat us, whether it's through cruelty or evilly or at the expense of all of us for their own selfish gains. That because they are the elites and are the chosen people, the chosen ones, those who say they are Jews but are not, but are the synagogue of Satan, that and because Satan, their father, and the fallen angels choose them to rule over humanity and to install and to incorporate as agenda what is the New World Order, to depopulate the planet and to poison us and to do everything at our expense to be wealthy and to rule, through the deception of the matrix and the creation of wealth out of nothing. And that because we are not smart enough to catch it or to be aware of their scheming and the Ponzi scheme that they've incorporated as the American dollar and other central banks and reserve currencies, that we deserve what we get, is what they say. So, that being said, I'm going to give you the link for what I'm going to be reading from, and so that you can save this and that you can share it with others, and that you can study it, because it is very interesting reading. And as I said, it will help you to understand the world in all of its insanity. And so, we're going to go ahead and get into it. Just a little background. The individual that's going to be speaking, his friend is the geneticist that was murdered. He was the one that was suicided, and he inherited the study. And he was the one that received the research of his friend. And he was the one that had to follow up on the investigation that was began by his friend. And so it says this: My friend never got the money for his investigative research as the donor was found dead in his apartment a short while later. The death was ruled a suicide by hanging, even though his feet were found to be barely touching the floor when he was discovered. Very strange. All right. Now, I want you to know that this is a true story. And this was also released as a Steve Quayle alert. I believe it was published initially in February of 2013, if I'm correct. Part 1, How It All Began, says this. An investigator friend was telling me a story to which I found easy to relate. He began, "One time I left home on a lazy Saturday evening to grab some comfort food. I told my wife I'll be right back as my dog, having heard the car keys jingle, dutifully pushed his way through the door to assist me on my mission. He instinctively knew I'd forget his doggy treats if he wasn't right there to help me. Minutes later, as I was walking out of the store with my booty, I saw a man whom I'd been searching for as the subject of a complex embezzlement scheme. He was walking to a rented moving van and towing his classic car on a trailer behind it. 9 days and 3,500 miles later, I'd completed my field work and handed the investigation over to several federal agencies for what had now become a federal case." My friend continued, "I returned home to my very distraught bride of 6 months. We were supposed to have left on our already twice delayed honeymoon cruise the previous Sunday morning. We didn't have cell phones in those days, and I didn't have a radio in my personal car. My handheld was on the charger at home when I'd gone on my quick trip. My first call came during a brief fuel stop at 4 o'clock the next morning." The hurried explanations fell on incredulously deaf ears. Between her astonished and uncharacteristically numerous expletives, for some months I'd been telling her, "3 times the charm, guess I was wrong again." She was not amused. He concluded his hour-long story stating, very matter-of-fact, "I guess I sort of understood why she divorced me. I sure do miss her." He then proceeded to explain how this life lesson had led him to understand one of his many laws of investigations, which, like a box of chocolates, were offered in no particular order and are only predictable by their unpredictability. I then proceeded to break what is now one of my laws. Never ask this guy a question without having first taken a bathroom break. He tends to be pretty long-winded, but the stories are generally worth it. So I asked, "What are some of the other laws you've come up with?" I knew the moment the words came out of my mouth, I should have restricted my questions to just one law. Hard to do with good chocolates. Without breaking stride, he says, "Belief is the driver of action," and proceeded into another long and winding story in order to give me his historical rationale for the law. About 20 years ago, oh boy, my first clue, this was going to take a while. I had recently completed my latest physics project at a location that uses a number for a name. A college from my time was an Air Force OSI agent specializing in advanced sciences and technology. He had heard I was heading to England for a very long overdue vacation and asked me if I'd volunteer to help him while I was there. He needed a witness on a simple mission to collect some evidence. Unwittingly, I said, "Sure, no problem." Oh, nuts, I just violated a law every service member knows all too well. Never volunteer. The smallest chocolates are always the ones with the nuts, usually. My, my friend continued his recollection of events. We went to a private city within the city. Security was well concealed but omnipresent to a trained eye. We went to a private office and met with a man whom I later came to know as a member of one of the wealthiest families on the planet. He talked with us briefly about funding a scientific investigation my friend was going to pursue. He invited us to dine with him at his residence later in the evening. In the interim, my friend proceeded to tell me how the man had apparently had a not near-death experience during a medical procedure. He'd apparently had a Pauline-like angelic encounter during which opaque and serpent-like scales had fallen from his eyes in the presence of a divine messenger. Layer after layer of lies and deceptions dissolved before him. At its conclusion, he came to believe his entire life was one of a big rubber band roll of tangled lies, every new one bigger than the last. He resolved to turn to a new way and set out to change his life and the world. After dinner, we collected blood tissue, hair, and oral swabs. He'd recently had a dental procedure and had saved a tooth, which he dutifully preserved in a small paper bag in his freezer. I videotaped the collection process as the evidence was bagged and tagged. My investigator friend continued his narrative on the plane ride back stateside. My friend, who at the time was one of the most knowledgeable DNA researchers on the planet, pulled out the biggest piece of mental jerky I'd ever gnawed on. His benefactor, test subject, believed that while most of the sons of Adam had double-strand DNA, he had been told by his family that he and his blood relatives were distinctly different and that he, like his fathers before him, had triple-strand DNA. He wanted my friend to secretly prove once and for all if this was true or not. The subject claimed that his extended family and their cousins, who are kings, queens, princes, and princesses, as well as leaders of industry and banking worldwide, believe that they are children of another worldly race of humanoid beings. He'd been taught by his tutors that once upon a time his ancestor had fallen to earth after some cosmic calamity in the time before the garden. We'll be right back. We'll pick it up on the other side. Hey, welcome back, everybody, for a second hour. I'm your host, Zen Garcia. This is Momentary Zen. We've been talking about the enmity between the seed of the woman and the seed of the serpent, and speaking about an investigation that was put forth by one of the world's most renowned at that time DNA experts, researcher, and how he was suicided in order to keep this information from reaching the public. But before I do go into and follow up on the previous segment, I do want to remind the listeners and those that catch the archives that we do need your monetary support, that Revolution Radio is the largest listener-supported, corporate-free, commercial-free radio network on the planet and on the internet, and that in order for us to be able to continue coming to you in the ways that we do, by utilizing this radio network as a platform for truth and not having to be biased in any way or to be exclusionary as far as being able to talk about certain aspects of truth, or in targeting the Illuminati of the New World Order and exposing them in the way that we do, by shedding a light on the darkness and on the agenda of the New World Order and world government, the depopulation, and all the other aspects that have been laid out in their dictates, the various think tank um, research groups like the Iron Mountain and Silent Weapons for a Quiet War, and all those different Illuminati groups that have come together to decide for us what is in our best interest, whether world peace is plausible and would be beneficial, um, things of that nature. They're poisoning the food supply and water and uh, the vaccines and putting cancer viruses and all kind of weird things, formaldehyde, antifreeze, aspartame, all those kind of things in there. That if you appreciate what we do and that you listen to many of the various hosts that come on every day of the week, and there's a lot of really good hosts covering a lot of very interesting and very eclectic information that you won't find available anywhere else. Please support us in whatever way you can with not only your time and your effort, but monetarily, and even for the price of a Happy Meal, for um, every week or even once a month, that you can gain access to the archives of all of the various hosts and tap into those shows that you've missed for $4.95 a month. You can get a password and a screen name and gain access to all of the archive shows from all the various hosts, which for $5, I mean, you can't beat that deal. Then there's the non-GMO seed pack and the bullet drive with all the critical information, all those different things, t-shirts, coffee mugs, all that. So if you can, go to freedomslips.com. Certainly don't put yourself out, feed your children, take care of yourself and your families. But for those that can, we do appreciate you, and ahead of time, thank you for your donation. All right, so going back to what I was talking about before getting to this part of the show, we're going to pick it up where I was talking about he'd been taught by his tutors that once upon a time his ancestors had fallen to earth after some cosmic calamity in the time before the garden. Now we know this as, Lucifer being cast out and the rebel angels all being banished before the garden. This is the war in heaven, the separation of light and darkness, the division of good and evil, which occurred on the second day. He believed that while their ancestral mother was Eve, their ancestral father was not Adam. He was torn to know if a child of Cain was actually genetically different and whether he could be saved. My friend never got the money for his investigative research, as the donor was found dead in his apartment a short while later. The death was ruled a suicide by hanging, even though his feet were found to be barely touching the floor when he was discovered. Very strange. My friend's wife gave me all of his research and notes upon his own untimely death some years later, leading me to bite into another chocolate in the Law of Investigations box. Fact is often stranger than fiction. And so, not only was the donor suicided and killed off, but then his friend, who was the well-known and world-renowned researcher, he was also killed, and so this individual then inherited his research. Continuing. My investigator friend continued his tale after my return from an overdue bathroom break. It was a long plane ride home. The funeral had been difficult for me. Losing a close friend at such a young age was not easy. Because of the nature of his work and mine, our talks had mostly been cryptic and necessarily too few and too far between. His young wife had only been with him a short while. Much of his early years and most of his real life were completely hidden from her. Need to know type stuff, and she didn't, so she didn't. Flash drives were common then. A removable hard drive sat in the open briefcase on the seat next to me in what originally had been a box for Christmas cards. A lone card sat on top of the unusual assortment of contents. It pictured a cat which had apparently licked the socket of a strand of Christmas lights that its owners was stringing atop a tree. It was a snowy setting in front of a festively lit home. The cat was amusingly adorned in a tangle of colored lights as it hung midair between the starry heavens and its hell, every limb painfully extended in a different direction, and every hair standing on end under the shock of electrocution. A similarly shocked dad was teetering atop of his now tipping ladder next to a window where small children and the wife, mouths agape, watched helplessly. An old hound dog laid on the porch nearby, barely raising one eyebrow to take in the entertainment. With the crowning star of David blazing brightly in his hand, only moments from the completion of his task, Dad was now headed on a previously unexpected trip, and so was I. Although the sticky note affixed to the top of the box stated simply 107, an operational code name I was once known by, the card was, when opened, stated only my Christian name with the following brief message: "Do what you do. I'll expect a complete report when you get here. Since you're reading this, I've already gone ahead." He signed the card Slowpoke. That was the name I had given him once when we were young and brimming over with life and innocence. Reading the note, my eyes uncontrollably began to tear up. I suddenly felt much older and alone. I dwelt on the card, his note, and on our very unusual lives for the rest of my long trip home. Good friends, old friends, aren't easy to come by. When I arrived in my city, I was very backed up in my work, and I couldn't really look at what I had for some time. For one thing, the information was password protected. He seemingly hadn't included a password with the box. It was quite some time later that it occurred to me that he actually had, and that was the true reason for the catchy card at the top of the box. Yeah, he was right, and I was slow. It was all there, his contacts, his drawings, and descriptions. His technical analysis was not easy to read, but I had enough, more than general knowledge, to follow his work. He traveled covertly to meet with specialists, including one Nobel laureate, to get their opinion on his observations and analysis. He'd even met with some very prominent religious authorities of varied beliefs to get their take on the possible implications of what he believed he had found. He was exceedingly careful and always traveled under some other role and purpose, and only as a peripheral inquiry brought his real questions to bear, conscious of the dangerous sensitivity of the subject at hand. Near the end of his notes, I came to a page titled Conclusions, followed by these lines: "This is a murder investigation," which was then followed on a separate line, written all in capitals, "of murder by a serial murderer." He then went into several pages of a long diatribe of identifiers and details that only recently have begun to make sense to me. He continued under a new heading, "Follow the Blood Trail." At first, he noted that the DNA strands he was examining seemed to be wound up more tightly than normal. You see, there are normally 10 rungs per complete twist of the double helix strand in normal human DNA. In his analysis of our subject's DNA taken from his blood samples, he found intermittent sections which appeared to be wound more tightly with only 9 rungs per complete twist, 9 being an unusual and noteworthy number, always turning and returning to itself. I thought to myself, that doesn't seem to be that unusual. Everybody I know seems to be like they're wound too tightly. Simultaneously, he observed and documented what he at first believed to be the foretold third strand of the subject's DNA. Upon closer analysis, he came to an entirely different and unexpected conclusion. Our subject had been lied to. It wasn't a third strand at all. It was a silvery thread-like, semi-transparent, serpentine-like parasite of infinitesimally small proportions. He observed that it was entangled intermittently, hopping back and forth between the normal double helix strands. It appeared to him that as the parasite grew, it continued to wrap itself like a beam or ivy-type vine plant will attach itself to any available protrusion. Unlike a normal snake or worm, this parasite had little hook-like protrusions that did seem to lend themselves to a gripping type of attachment all along the strand. His notes described them as alligator or dragon feet, but only for his amusement, not because they were that actual form. Occasionally he noted that it appeared that some of the threaded parasites seemed to connect to adjacent parasites, creating what appeared to be tiny nets cross-circuiting between the different sections and strands of DNA. In his note, my friend penned some personal thoughts after having considered his observations and source of his DNA materials. He thought of the Vatican's pronouncement that aliens are our cousins, and that the Vishnu teachings of a time when gods flew in spaceships and destroyed whole cities in a single blast. He even had notes about Elijah being caught up in a chariot of fire. Maybe he had misread or misunderstood the entire history of his Bible. Maybe from Genesis to Revelation it was about some far more tangible and real fallen angel alien cousins than the ghost-like destroying angels he had always pictured in his imagination. He gazed at it and studied it in shocked disbelief and asked to himself, is this pathetic little blood-sucking worm the tiny origin of the tyrannical destroyer of so many lives and worlds? But he could not escape the fact that, small as it was, the DNA strands that it were attached to were just as small, and both had the informational encoding to make good or evil. Yes, the DNA and the serpentine creature entangled in it potentially bore the information, knowledge, blueprint to create good or evil. My investigator friend continued, I remembered the time I had sat with a hard, cold desk under my arms as I stared back into the false Cheshire grin surrounding that mouthful of fake pearly whites. He was staring me down from his star chamber seat, waiting for my answer from in front of the concealing screen which provided me only partial anonymity from the rest of the gallery. You see, he thought he'd caught me in a lie with what I had told his in-house investigator. But his investigator's authorizations and clearances were not the same as the senators. I replied, as you know, Senator, the lie is different at every level. And so it was, and so shall it always be. In this life, anyway, from the highest thrones in this world, and now, here again, right down to the tiniest strands of DNA. It's lies, 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 all the way down. The truth is, the so-called third strand of DNA that somehow could make them superior was just another lie from the father of lies. In the end, it was just another lecherous, parasitic, alien hitchhiker on the road of life, trying to deceive the vulnerable into forfeiting their birthright for a bag of magic beans. My friend tried and was trying at the time of his death to determine if there was a way to separate the writhing and gripping in entanglements of this demon seeds from the host DNA without destroying the host. He also speculated on possible ways to identify the reptilian hosts who walk among us while living in the grip of the reptilian seeds' alien possession. It was here that I began my work, picking up where my friend had too abruptly left off. Deep in my thoughts, my friend continued. Once again, I'd reached into life's box of chocolates. Interesting thing, he noted. There's usually some chocolate-covered jellies with red-colored sprinkles on top in life's little box of chocolates, and I liked those. But this time, it seemed like I'd reached instead for the 3 pastel-colored, hard-shell candy-coated nuts at the center of the box. I did remember clearly that it seemed like just as I closed my eyes and started to munch, I began to feel dizzy, and for only a moment before I felt myself beginning to spin and teeter over and down into the rabbit's hole. There are more laws of investigation my investigator friend brought to my attention, and he began quoting them to me. First, belief is the driver of action, which bore repeating. He then seemingly digressed, saying that the smallest chocolates are always the ones with the nuts, and of course a law I had come to understand. Fact is frequently stranger than fiction. Becoming increasingly more animated, my friend then said something that really made me think. The lie is different at every level, and so it was, and so shall it always be. In this life, anyway, from the highest thrones in this world, and now here again, right down to the tiniest strands of DNA. It's lies, 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 all the way down. My friend then cited Pellegrino, Powell, and Sir Isaac Asimov, who penned the 3 laws of alien behavior. Law number 1. Their survival will be more important than our own survival. If an alien species has come to choose between them and us, they won't choose us. It is difficult to imagine a contrary case. Species don't survive by being self-sacrificing. Law number 2. Wimps don't become top dogs. No species makes it to the top by being passive. The species in charge of any given planet will be highly intelligent, alert, aggressive, and ruthless when necessary. Law number 3. They will assume that the first 2 laws apply to us. And so my colleague continued. My friend told me how his dizzying mental fall was eventually arrested by a very hard floor. In the mixed box of investigator laws my friend calls life, those 3 pastel-colored, candy-coated, and chocolate-covered nuts can apparently be some very hard pills to swallow. He raised his voice. Doug, he shouted, rousing me like a freight train. Doug, it hit me like the hard ground we're standing on. It's all around us, everywhere. The They think of us like aliens, but they're the aliens. Don't you get it? They're laughing at us. They think they're the children of space aliens from another world marooned on this tiny blue orb. They're just doing time till they can figure a way off this rock so they can get back up to their Death Star moonship and figure out how to fix it and then head back home to mommy. I sat there listening as he continued to talk. I looked at the heart-shaped Valentine's box of chocolates I'd given my wife earlier in the week. We'll be right back for final segment. All right, welcome back everybody for final segment. I'm going to go ahead and continue reading so that I can make it through this. I hope that this information blesses your life. It certainly confirms the whole premise of my fourth book, Lucifer, Father of Cain, which I think helps people to understand the gospel and what we're dealing with as a world, unlike any other discernment or book really can do. So, continuing. I sat there listening as he continued to talk. I looked at the heart-shaped Valentine's box of chocolates I'd given my wife earlier in the week. Sure enough, when I opened it, she hadn't eaten any yet, but she had humored me with a perfunctory, "It's the thought that counts," and a peck on the cheek. I guess it's some kind of highbrow female smarter than everyone else, non-fat thing. Anyway, sure enough, there they were, the delightfully showcased evil omens, 3 large, pastel-colored, candy-coated, and chocolate-covered nuts. Just as my friend described. Forewarned is forearmed, that's what I say. I picked a safe, fat, and round soft chocolate or two before I put the lid back on the box. I wasn't ready to drink the Kool-Aid yet, but I wasn't shutting him down either. He continued, "See the way I see it. It's all about the blood. They marry and intermarry to keep the alien blood pure. That's why all the incestuousness in these elites, royal cliques, they're keeping it all in the family." He then explained how he'd found that this guy and that girl were actually related to some other guy who wasn't the guy we were all lied to about, who was so-and-so official's father or mother. After a while, it actually started to make some kind of sense. Or maybe the blood sugar was just starting to kick in and make me a little tipsy. Anyway, whatever, I lazily thought to myself. I stared off into space, deep in my hypoglycemically induced contemplative thoughts. On the shelf beside the TV in my den, an old VHS box sat, its title staring back at me. It was a zombie for the I was a zombie for the FBI. It's a campy 80s black and white B movie some college kids made about some brothers who discovered sunglasses that, when worn, allowed them to see aliens masquerading as humans and plotting to destroy the real humans and take over the earth. A more well-known movie version is They Live. As I adjusted my reading glasses, I had a few new thoughts of my own. What if? What if? And then, rousing me again out of my darkness with his now booming voice, my investigator friend said, "It." And then he said it again, more slowly and decisively, and just then it struck me. It struck me like a silver bullet to my politically incorrect brain. The haze half cleared, and for a long moment I realized exactly what he'd been trying to say all along. The clouding scales began to fall from my eyes also, just as they had for our subject in his near-death experience. I briefly wondered whether I was on the verge of my own dialectic diabetic-induced coma. Perhaps, like our original subject, maybe I was having a near-death experience of my own. I reached for the water on the table beside me, but it was actually the grandkids' Kool-Aid. I drank it anyways as I thought to myself, it doesn't really matter what I believe. It doesn't matter what the lying facts say. It doesn't matter what any technical analysis reveals. It doesn't even matter what the religious sages thought or believed. It only matters what they believe. Because our original subject and his relatives, who are kings, queens, princes, and princesses, as well as leaders of industry and banking worldwide, believe and act as though they are the children of an otherworldly race of humanoid beings. But not human only, hybrid human, more than human, superior alien humans. Our subject and his kin had been taught by their families and tutors that once upon a time their ancestors had fallen to earth after some cosmic calamity in the time before the garden. He believed that while their ancestral mother was Eve, their ancestral father was not Adam. They believe that they are our humanoid cousins, superior hybrids, part alien and only part human. They once reigned from Olympus and were pharaohs. Whatever the real truth of their history and their belief is the driver of their actions. Being the true believers they are, they will continue to operate in accordance with their belief and the laws of alien, Darwinian type survival. That's why they interbreed, passing the garter in order from one bridesmaid to the next, to maintain the purity of the bloodline. That's why they secretly meet and connive, continuing to pass power between themselves. That's why they must manage the rest of mankind, fooling them into focusing their life energy and ingenuity on wars of self-destruction and debt, so that we may be forever enslaved to their lusts on this prison planet till death do us part. More than afraid, they know in their black hearts this is their fight for survival. The fight for survival. It had begun, just as my friend had said, as a murder investigation, starting with the first murderer, when that Luciferian demon dad had whispered the evil deed to his willing child, Cain. It has since continued down through time with Atlantean devolutions and God wiping them off the earth in the days of Noah, and the sons of Adam repeatedly fighting for their own survival by destroying the aged reptilian crossbred giants in Canaan land. And later, David destroying the hybrid Goliath and his 4 hybrid brothers. And now, as in the days of Noah, the hidden giants, the true believers, hiding in plain sight, so powerful, so important, and yet so afraid. I was reminded how in the mountains of Afghanistan the people will say, their cousin lives on the other side of that mountain, then in the next breath remind you that the word for cousin is interchangeably the same word meaning enemy. Interchangeably, these earthbound half-cousins of ours continue to laugh, but it is a nervous laugh at that. They have a joke or two at our expense, recreating their lying father's fall to earth and flashing their heretofore secret gang signs, hand signals to each other right in our faces. I know now how dangerous their beliefs are, and I know that they are being driven by their beliefs, taught to them by their father, their real father, the father of lies. And even now he knows the truth and whispers in his initiate's ear, just as he first did in Cain's ear. The sons of Adam, as long as they live, are dangerous. Just then my friend began to cite another law, stating, "And when you're finally out of chocolates, it's time to make stew." I begged his indulgence for a few minutes as I wandered down the hall to the restroom. I was wondering to myself, where did I leave my ladder? I gotta get out of this rabbit's hole before the bad guys figure out there's no rabbits for the rabbit stew they're dreaming of for their creation. They might decide to change cookbooks to suit whatever else they might find. Yes, there it is, I thought. They thought to serve man. And there you have it, the investigation, the conclusions, and the study, and the links of how the elites know that they are not of Adam, that their father is the devil, and that all the things that he cited as far as the war between the giants, the rebel angels being cast out, the division of good and evil, the separation of light and darkness, how Lucifer became Satan, the adversary of humanity and the accuser of the brethren, his beguilement of Adam and Eve, her impregnation with Cain, the firstborn son of the devil, the first hybrid child born as a scion of the Nakash, the feathered serpent, the winged guardian of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. The ensuing imploration by the patriarchs of Adam's line through Seth, because Abel was murdered by his half-brother, to never mix or intermarry with the sons of Cain, or the line of Cain, and how they are not genealized with the children of Adam, the seed of the woman, and how Christ, when he died on the cross, fulfilled the prophecy, which is one of the first prophetic utterances in Genesis chapter 3, verse 15, where it talked about the son of the woman, the seed of the woman, how he would crush the skull, the head of the serpent at the same time that it would be nipping at his heel. And for those that don't understand what I'm talking about, I'm referencing here Golgotha, which, if you don't know, Golgotha means Goliath of Gath. Goliath of Gath, because see, when David chose to go out and to fight the Philistine champion Goliath, and he took with him 4 sling stones, all with the names of his fathers, the patriarchs of Adam's line. And he used the one sling stone and hit Goliath dead center between his eyes, and stunning him, knocked him to the ground, in which he then ran up, grabbed his own sword, and decapitated him. And then, taking Goliath's sword and his skull, his head, he went into Jerusalem and paraded it, showed it, held it as a trophy to the children Israel, and showed to them how he had defeated the Philistine champion, how Yahweh had given him glory over the mocker of his people. And then, taking that skull, he buried it in a place called Golgotha, the hill of the skull, Calvary. And that when Christ was crucified on the cross, he was actually crushing the head of Goliath, who is the seed of the serpent. And that prophecy that was uttered in Genesis chapter 3, verse 15, would be fulfilled thousands of years later on the mountain there in Jerusalem, as Christ, being crucified and succumbing to death, died on the cross and was at the same time crushing the skull of Goliath, as Goliath was nipping at the heel of our Savior and Messiah. And then 3 days later, he arose from the dead, and being resurrected to life, resurrected the other patriarchs of old, who, being sprung from the graves, were seen throughout Jerusalem. And they were called to witness to the things that had been done by Christ in breaking open the gates of iron, the doors of brass, and freeing all those that had died and that were awaiting in Sheol, from Adam to the thief on the cross, and taking them back into paradise. He gave them over to Michael, who then baptized them in the Archurasian lake. And having been baptized, they were allowed into New Jerusalem, the city of God. They had to return to their first estate in what was the first resurrection. And they are there awaiting for us now. As Christ said, I go now to prepare a place before you. There are many mansions in my Father's house. We all are aspiring to the same. And so I hope that you enjoyed this story, because it also helps you to understand the gospel in a way that you never otherwise would be able to. The story of Noah's flood, the wiping out of the giants, it was not a judgment against humanity. Just as the Most High's declaration, Yahweh Yahuwah's declaration, the I am that I am, to wipe out every man, woman, and child when entering into the land of Canaan, which was occupied by the sons of Anak, the giants, the men of renown, those that abducted women, raped them, took them as wives, impregnated them, and that sired the giants of old, the fallen angels, the watchers, their interdiction into the affairs of humanity. All of this, it has always been a war between these two bloodlines, these two seed lines. And that even at the end of days, when Christ comes again, it would be the same thing. The harvest of the wheat and the tares, it's the same thing. The fulfillment of the prophecy, the eradication of the children of evil, the sons of Belial. It says this, and his disciples came unto him, saying, declare unto us the parable of the tares of the field. He answered and said unto them, he that soweth the good seed is the Son of Man. The field is the world, the good seed are the children of the kingdom, but the tares are the children of the wicked one. The enemy that sowed them is the devil. The harvest is the end of the world, and the reapers are the angels. As therefore the tares are gathered and burned in the fire, so shall it be in the end of this world. The Son of Man shall send forth his angels, and they shall gather out of his kingdom all things that offend, and them which do iniquity, and shall cast them into a furnace of fire. There shall be wailing and gnashing of teeth. Then shall the righteous shine forth as the sun in the kingdom of their Father. Who hath ears to hear, let him hear. And so, my friends, as Christ said, I will open my mouth in parables, I will utter things which have been kept secret from the foundation of the world. And as we stated earlier, that the righteous men and the prophets of old had desired to know these things, but most they do not have the ears to hear, the eyes to see, nor the mind to understand. But unto you it is given to understand. For verily I say unto you that many prophets and righteous men have desired to see those things which ye see, and have not seen them, and to hear those things which ye hear, and have not heard them. You, my friends, are the keeper of the secrets. You are the wisdom keepers, the holders of ancient metaphor. You are to plant the seeds, to share the knowledge with those that are ready. It says, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. And how so very true. And you are those teachers. You are to help, guide, and direct, and to share truth with those that are seeking, that want to know more than anything the truth of what's really going on in this world, and how we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but the powers, the principalities, the rulers of darkness, wickedness in high places. God bless all. Good night. And stay tuned for Vinny Eastwood. He'll be on following after me. Good night, all. God bless.